Nosferatu is back. I heard that announcement and immediately decided to watch the first interpretation before I saw the latest one. This sent me down a rabbit hole of discovering every version of the legendary vampire to have ever graced the visual medium. Although there is debate about which films are counted in the Nosferatu canon, I did find 7 of them, which more or less everyone agrees upon. So today, I will take you on a journey that began in 1922 and has reached its latest destination in 2025. Welcome to Marvelous Video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Nosferatu, 1922. The year was 1922, and F.W. Murnau decided to bring the story of Dracula to the silver screen for the very first time. The German filmmaker was part of what we call the German Expressionist film movement, and no doubt, the film fits perfectly in that canon, with high contrast imagery, dark alleyways, and heavy use of shadows to create the eerie atmosphere. Murnau, in a way, made sure that we never forget the tale of Dracula. In his version of the story, the main antagonist of the film was Count Orlok, a wealthy, mysterious nobleman who lives in an old castle deep inside the Carpathian Mountains. The film never really goes into the backstory of Orlok, although there is a book in the movie that talks about the existence of vampires. Spoiler alert, the book actually ends up being the thing that kills Count Orlok. That's all I'm gonna say. The story follows the basic plotline of the Dracula lore, as Orlok gets attracted to Thomas Hutter's wife, Ellen. Hutter had gone to meet Orlok because the Count wanted to buy a property, and Hutter was a real estate agent. Of course, this is all a ruse for Orlok to find his new victim. What really stood out to me when I watched the film was Nosferatu's slow, almost assassin-like approach. Orlok is a tall, gaunt figure with bulging eyes and a bald head. Murnau gave Nosferatu a death-like appearance, with long hands that are almost always in a claw-like position. He stands straight and walks straight, and I don't remember him blinking. It could be just me, but that's the impact of the death stare he has. As for the rigidity, I think that's more in line with him being the undead in a way. How he goes to sleep every night in a coffin and rises from the grave like an upright statue. Nonetheless, Murnau definitely immortalized Dracula in people's minds. He brought the tale from the pages of a book to the silver screen. In my opinion, it still stands out as one of the most impactful vampire. If you haven't watched it, I strongly suggest you do. Nosferatu the Vampire, 1979. Atmospheric, one word that captures it for me. Herzog's canvas is so huge in Nosferatu the Vampire that it actually starts to feel like reality. With his roots deeply rooted in documentary filmmaking, Herzog used all his skills at capturing real locations and people and mixed them with his extreme narrative abilities to make the remake of the 1922 film. To be honest, it does not feel like a remake, although it is much closer to the source material. Herzog's take on the vampire is singularly his own. Herzog's Nosferatu is actually called Count Dracula, as in the source text, because by the time he made the film, the novel had come into the public domain. Appearance-wise, he is pretty close to the 1922 film, majorly due to the admiration Herzog has for the original. The key difference is how they treat the vampire. While the 1922 film had fear as a central idea, Herzog goes heavy on hopelessness. The location, the fog-covered landscape, and even Count Dracula himself give this whiff of despair. Klaus Kinski, the actor who played Dracula, gave one of his best performances as the vampire lord. This is also perhaps the first work that adds a touch of humanity to the Count's character. In this film, Dracula is more like a cursed figure who is tormented by his own fate and longing for company. His vampiric thirst for blood, hence, is more of a necessity than a desire. The film also introduces the idea of driving a stake through the heart of Dracula when Van Helsing kills him in the movie. Nosferatu a Venezia, 1988. I will go through this quickly because I don't know how many people who have heard of this movie, much less seen it, plan to be an actual sequel to Herzog's masterpiece. This turned out to be a disaster, with constant directorial changes from Klaus Kinski himself, taking the reins at one point of his being abusive to the crew and changing the script on set. This film is more of a cult oddity to film lovers. Unlike the other films, this is set in the modern era and has a completely different storyline. The one thing I would say stands out is the idea behind the film. Kinski wanted to change the portrayal of Nosferatu. He wanted the vampire to be displayed as a soul tormented by immortality, who longs for love and peace above all else. but is forced to fall back to his bloodthirst. This matches the tone Herzog started with, and could have worked as a sequel had it been done properly. One clear divergence from other portrayals is the long hair that Nosferatu has in this film. Apart from his teeth, he appears quite human, which adds to the tormented, cursed characterization Kinski was going for, along with a sexual undertone in the film. Shadow of the Vampire, 2000. We often talk about method acting and how an actor transforms himself to fit the role, even going so far as living, eating, and talking like them for months. Take that idea, multiply it by 10, and give it a huge twist, and you have Shadow of the Vampire. It's not actually a Nosferatu movie, but more of a comment on the art of filmmaking. It is a dark comedy that imagines what if Max Schreck, who played Nosferatu in the 1922 film, was actually a vampire, and hence, the portrayal was so good. I think Willem Dafoe made a masterful decision that actually ended up earning him an Academy Award nomination. It is like a BTS of Murnau's silent film, which narrates the making of the entire project and Murnau's obsession with making it as real as possible. The vampire himself is basically a replica of the original film. The same bald head, long pointy ears, and two big incisors. This version of Nosferatu is an unpredictable being that is not only fascinated with the project, but also has disdain for the mortality of these people. This strange contrast of fear and amusement gives it a comedic edge that is very entertaining to watch. The film has been applauded for its adherence to the recreation of Murnau's film, as well as Dafoe's performance, which allows, although imaginary, a peek into the mind of Max Schreck, an actor who was so good, he convinced the audience it was real. The Last Voyage of the Demeter, 2023. Demeter was the name of the ship that transported Dracula from the mountains to the city. The mountains and the cities have changed in various adaptations, but almost all of them have this section of the voyage, where the vampire travels by ship. The Last Voyage of the Demeter actually takes one chapter from the book, The Captain's Log, and turns it into a psychological survival horror movie. In this version, Vlad III Draculae, or Dracula, has existed for a while and has scared and tormented the people around his castle to offer him brides for his consumption to keep him off. But the vampire decided that he wanted to go to London, where his feasts would never end. He hires a ship to transport him to London along with his latest bride, Anna, and the Transylvanian soil and his private cargo. You can watch the rest of the film because, frankly, I think it is a good movie, and I would hate to give you spoilers for a not-so-old film. What I do want to talk about is the appearance and the portrayal. This Dracula is nothing like the aristocratic vampires of the past. This is a bestial, bat-like creature. He feeds on the blood of his victims and even eats them alive. He is a cold-blooded killer who enjoys the taste of the hunt, with huge wing, long sharp talons, and a terrifying face. This is an abomination. This creature can move super fast, shapeshift, and heal very quickly. He is a cerebral hunter who loves cornering his victims and preying on their fear. Nosferatu, 2024/2025. And we have finally caught up with the timeline and reached 2025. Robert Eggers, known for his faithful historical works, such as The Lighthouse, has made a remake of the 1922 film. The film stays true to the 1922 storyline, but has the added advantage of modern film technology. Now, Eggers is a stickler for historical accuracy, which is why his Nosferatu is very different from the 1922 and even the later films up to 2023. Bill Skarsgård's vampire is more zombie-like in appearance. First of all, this one is not bald but actually has patchy hair falling off to one side of the head. A dusty white face with deep-set eyes. He is mostly seen dressed in black, accurately depicting the attire worn by the aristocrats of that era. His body is also disfigured, with flesh missing from certain areas, and has that infected look of a dead body. A major deviation is a mustache. Yes, this Nosferatu has a mustache. The original novel depicted Dracula with one, and Eggers agreed that no count of this era would have been clean-shaven. In the personality department, this is a killer. He is someone who enjoys tormenting his victims and can even drive people mad with his psychic powers. He is lustful and vengeful and keeps his hunger as his ultimate goal. No one is spared, and no one is beyond his grasp. While the later films try to delve into the humanity of the vampire, this modern remake takes him back to heartless, psychopathic roots with no limits or restriction. FYI, this Nosferatu drinks blood from the chest of the victims and not the neck, because all the folklore said so. And Eggers, well, he was never going to change that. SpongeBob SquarePants, Graveyard Shift, 2001. Just so you don't have nightmares, How about we look at some lighter than usual adaptations? The tale is old enough to pervade other genres of media too. Nosferatu made an unexpected entrance in the episode Graveyard Shift of the SpongeBob SquarePants and the Patrick Star Show. He is an exact copy of the 1922 film and even has the same rigid, slow, and silent aesthetics of the Murnau classic. In this version, Nosferatu is the night manager of the Krusty Krab and often stays hidden in the cooler. He scares others by flickering the lights in the fast food restaurant. He is not the stone-cold killer like the other adaptation, but rather a creepy prankster who often smiles at the camera silently. It is the universal recognition of the Nosferatu image that made it a hit among the audience. To see a villain of such magnitude appear in a parody of a horror movie was an amusing revelation, further adding to the canon, in its own way, of Nosferatu. Conclusion. Well, there you have it. More than 100 years of Nosferatu's existence. When I first heard about the latest Nosferatu, I honestly wasn't too excited. I felt that this narrative had run its course. However, the way critics and audiences have responded to the films makes me wonder if the story still has a long way to go. Have you watched the latest film? Which has been your favorite? And are you planning to watch any based on the list we shared with you? Let us know in the comments. And I will see you soon in another episode. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.